Hello and welcome back to Maximo Bite Size, a series of videos on the functional aspects of Maximo Manage. Good morning and welcome to the third episode in the series on maintenance planning. I'm Andrew Jeffrey and today we'll be discussing crews, two applications, crew types and crews, but we will also see where crew workgroups fit in. Please subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss out on new episodes as they are published. Today we'll be looking at two more applications found in the resources submodule, a part of the administration module. Crews is today's subject, and while I think of a crew as being a team of people digging up the road while I wait in the queue for the traffic light to turn green, a crew in Maximo can be any size team where two or more persons work on a regular basis. You cannot create a crew in Maximo without having a crew type, which is the template for a crew, and so this is where we'll start. The record structure of the crew type is copied into the crew. The crew positions and their craft requirements, the required tools and qualifications. The crew's application is where we will head next. It has the assignment of labour to crew positions and the assignment of tools to the required tools, verifying with the assignments that the qualifications needed for the crew are being met. If you know crew types and you look at the crews main tab and think, I now understand crews, well, you will only be partly right. The two tabs for labour assignments and tool assignments is where crews gets interesting. So we'll be spending time on this. A crew work group is the body of people who have labour records from whom the labour assignments of one or more crews are made. People have holidays and are sick or have other reasons for not being available, so you need to temporarily backfill crew positions from others who are available so that the crew can go out on their jobs. When considering work planning, you can think of a crew type like a craft. It is what you reference on a job plan. I need a crew of a crew type to fulfill some work. When the assignment is made on a work order, you are assigning one of the crew in a similar way to how you assign labour to a craft requirement. There is a lot to go through, so let's get started. A crew type is a template for a crew. Work is planned with crew types and crews are assigned to work to match the crew type requirements. Unfortunately, there is no data for crew types and crews in the MaxDemo database for you to follow, but you'll find a series of articles on crew types, crews and crew work groups on MaximoSecrets.com. Just search for crews. When you create a new crew type, the status will be set to active. The other state is inactive. But you will not be able to make a crew type inactive if it is referenced on a crew. Crew type records are defined at the organisation level in Maximo. You will need to define a set of crew positions and then specify the craft that is required for each crew position. One position, one craft, but the same craft and or skill level, vendor or labour rate contract can be referenced multiple times. For example, you could have two electricians working together, a leader position and a worker position with the same craft requirement of elect second class. However, before you can enter your positions, you will need to set them up in the ALN domain called AM Crew Position. Some typical positions might be driver, leader, worker or helper, or for a utility team it might be linesman 1 and linesman 2. When you are creating the required crafts against the crew type, you might find that you receive the error message BMX AA4191E. The value elect is not valid for craft. Specify a valid value for craft. If you had watched the previous video, you might have picked up at the end of the section on crafts that there is a crew field in the header which you must set for the craft to be selected on a crew type or crew. You can do this in bulk from the list tab of the crafts application using the action Make Available to Crews. There are two other table windows in the crew types application: required qualifications and required tools. For required tools, you will also find that there is a crew field in the header of the tools application, and the tool will need to be made active at both the item set and organisation level to be used on a crew type. But there is also one more setting for a tool. It must be set to rotating, because you will be assigning a tool asset to the crew. The List tab action Make Available to Crews will also be found on the Tools application. Tools can have required qualifications. It is a table window found at the bottom of the main tab of the Tools application. These are the qualifications required to use a tool. If you look closely at the bottom of the screenshot, there is one required qualification that was copied from the required qualifications of the tool that I had entered lower down in the application. You can use the new row button to add additional required qualifications and link them to the positions of the required craft. This will mean that when you make the labour assignment to that position, the labour must fulfil both the craft requirement for the position as well as the qualification requirement. For the B truck qualification, bucket truck driver, no position is referenced. This means that anyone who is assigned to the crew can have that qualification. In the example, it would normally be the driver position who fulfills the bucket truck driver qualification. However, for qualifications marked as added by tool, the position field is read-only. The required qualification table window normally is presented in its closed position, and you need to use the right-hand end button in the toolbar, Show Table. For a new record, you can enter a quantity if, say, 2 people need the same qualification. The quantity field will be read-only if you enter a position. There is no quantity field in the required tools table window. If you need multiple of a tool, for example, 2 mobile traffic lights, then you enter the same tool on multiple rows with a different tool sequence value. If you're wondering what a tool sequence is, well, it is nothing more than a label to give the record a unique value. Light position for the required crafts. For the 2 traffic lights, the tool sequence might be signal 1 and signal 2. All 3 table windows have a remarks field with long description. In the header of the application, an hourly rate is calculated from the hourly rates of the chosen required crafts, and you can use the override hourly rate if you wish to provide a different rate. The hourly rate does not include tool rates, which are defined at the organisation level. This might be one reason why you override the rate. When you create a crew, you must specify the crew type. It is a mandatory field. The required crafts, required tools and required qualifications are copied from the crew type to the crew. These 3 table windows look exactly as they do in the crew types application. You can just make out at the bottom of the screenshot that 3 required crafts were created when we associated the crew type BOS OHL. Once the crew has been created, you can add, change and remove the crew requirements, adding new tools or qualifications, or deleting one crew position and its craft and replacing it with another craft of the same crew position. Crews are defined at the organisation level, like labour, and the status of a crew is the same as for a crew type: active, the default, and inactive. You will not be able to make the crew inactive if it is referenced on an active job plan or an open work order. There is an action, View Work Orders, which will help you find open work orders. For open work orders, it is the planned labour that is checked. An assignment against the crew will not stop the crew from being made inactive. There will be restrictions on what you can change on the crew record about the free table windows once you have started to assign labour and tools to the crew. The crew must be in active state to make these labour and tool assignments. There are several fields in the header of a crew which you will be familiar with, as they also exist on the labour application. The calendar and shift will be needed to be able to add the availability of the crew, which you manage with the action Modify Crew Availability, or the Graphical Resource View application, a part of Maximo Scheduler, but available to you in Maximo Application Suite. Calendars, shifts and availability will be the subject of the next video. You will probably define a worksite and work location, the depot where the crew works. The labour which are assigned to the crews will probably have the same references for these two fields. They are useful for filtering labour and crew records. If the crew is crewed with a subcontractor team, you would enter the vendor and a contract if you are using labour rate contracts in Maximo. The hourly rate will not start to be calculated until the labour assignments are being made. The override hourly rate is not copied from the associated crew type record. The three fields in the second column of the header use labour location, save location with work order, and location refresh in seconds, are all used with GPS tracking. The two fields in the third column, start location and end location, are used with creating street level routes to plot the route the crew will take on a map when they work in the field against multiple dispersed work orders. Crew work groups we will return to in the last section of this video. As a subject, there is a lot more to labour assignments and tool assignments than can be covered with a couple of slides. There is also a graphical crew management application, part of Maximo Scheduler but now available under Maximo Application Suite, that can be used to visualise the crew assignments. If you're going to get to grips with this subject, then set aside a couple of days. Fortunately, you will find several articles on crews at Maximo Secrets. Before you start to make labour and tool assignments to crews, you should set up availability for the crew, as we will find out in the next video. On the Labour Assignments tab, you are assigning a labour to a crew position by matching the craft and or skill level requirements that were defined for the position. These may have included the vendor and labour rate contract reference. The labour assignment is made from an effective date, a date time which would normally be the start time of a shift on a date when the crew is available. The default is the start time of today's shift. The end date of the assignment is normally left empty, meaning that the labour is assigned to the crew permanently or until a change occurs. It is important that you align the calendar shift of the labour you assign to the crews with the same calendar shift as you defined for the crew. Otherwise, there will be times in the day when the labour is not available. In the Labour Assignments tab, there are 3 table windows: the required crafts, required qualifications, and the assigned labour, which is where you make the labour assignments to the crew positions. There are 2 actions for the assigned labour table window: new row and new unrestricted row. I'll explain the latter of these in a minute. As you make the labour assignments, the hourly rate will be calculated based on the craft of the labour you choose. The screenshot is showing one assigned labour Calcott with an effective date of the 31st of October 22 at 7 AM today. There is no end date. This would be considered a permanent assignment. Notice that while the craft lines up to the driver position, it is not an exact match, as the craft labour record selected was driver with a skill level of first class. As you make the labour assignments, hopefully everything lines up okay, and there is a perfect match to each of the positions. This is where the crew assignment status action is used. It will indicate the status of each assignment made for each crew requirement position. There are a few statuses apart from OK. Rec not met, which stands for requirement not met. Assigned labour does not meet the requirements for the position. This occurs if there is not a perfect match between the 4 fields craft, skill level, vendor and contract, between that required for the position and the labour assigned. For example, if the required craft was a crafted driver, but you assigned the labour record with a crafted driver and a skill level of first class, then it will not be a match, and requirement not met will be shown. Maximo does not consider whether someone is overqualified, only whether it is an exact match. This is the value we got for the assignment of labour Calcott. Not available. Assigned labour is either not available during a shift, or there is a shift mismatch, or the labour is assigned to other work orders. If the calendar or crew do not have a calendar and shift, or the calendar does not have a work period date for the date shown in the dialog, then not available will be shown as priority over requirement not met. Not assigned. No labour is assigned for the craft requirement. This might mean that a labour assignment had been made, but the end date is now in the past. And finally, multiple. Multiple labour have been assigned to the same position with overlapping times. Their effective date and end date overlap. The crew assignment status action dialog allows you to view the status of labour assignments, qualifications and tool assignments for a particular date. If you change the date, the records are refreshed, so if the status is all okay today, it may not be tomorrow. There are 5 table windows. The other 2 are the labour assignments and tool assignments for the selected date. As you make new labour assignments to positions where labour already exists, Maximo will do its best not to overlap the records. For example, if you assigned Libri to the driver position from a date next week, then Calcott would have an end date for his labour assignment so that Libri and Calcott assignments do not overlap. You would have received the warning message BMX AT0347W. Labour Calcott is already assigned as driver for the specified date. Do you want to replace Labour Calcott with Labour Libri? Click yes to replace Labour Calcott with Labour Libri. Click no to assign Labour Libri as an additional resource to this crew. Answering yes performs a permanent replacement. Calcott will no longer be on the crew from Libri's effective date. Answering no performs a temporary replacement for the period when Libri is being placed on the crew. Maximo creates a new labour assignment for Callcott, starting the period when the temporary replacement with Library ends. The new unrestricted row action provides a different dialog box, and it suppresses many of the warnings which you might otherwise get. It can get you easily into positions where you have multiple labour assigned to the same position for a period. One of the features of the new unrestricted row occurs if a labour is already assigned to a different crew. Then it will remove them from that crew for the specified period and return them to the crew if the original assignment is no longer than the new one. It is useful for making these temporary assignments. Other benefits of the new unrestricted row action are that it can create an additional crew position and labour assignment in one action, or add a craft that has not been crew enabled. I would use the new unrestricted row action only after you are familiar with making labour assignments, and then introduce it slowly until you are familiar with the issues that it can create and the benefits it can provide. You cannot delete labour assignments where the effective date is in the past. You can provide an end date which is in the past, and this will make the labour assignment disappear, because it is only showing assignments where the end date is null or in the future, but the record still exists in the table. The Action View Assignments shows the assigned labour and assigned tool assets for a date range that you specify between a start date and end date. You need to use the refresh button to fetch the records after making changes to those dates. And just a final word on the hourly rate field on the main tab. It is only calculated when you make labour assignments. It does not include tool hourly rates. And the rates it uses come from the craft rate table and not the labour craft rate table. It is the override hourly rate field which is used on a work order if this is present. Tool assignments are made in a similar manner, but from the Tool Assignments tab. There are two table windows, Required Tools and Assigned Tool Assets. Remember, it is assets of item type tool which you assign. If you use New Row, Maximo will check whether the tool asset is already assigned to another crew, and you would receive the error message BMX AT0770E Asset 1422 has conflicting crew assignments for the date specified. Change dates, resolve conflicts manually, or add using unrestricted row. I am showing the new unrestricted row dialog where you select the tool sequence for the crew. This differs a little from the similar dialog in the Labour Assignments tab in that you are looking up any position from the ALN domain and not just the positions which have been created for the crew. In the case of tools, there is no equivalent ALN domain. It is only the tool sequence references you created for the crew. Going back to the example I gave a while ago in this video, the utility crew could be taking up to 4 traffic lights on an assignment. You could create all 4 tool requirement records, signal 1 through signal 4, and assign tool assets to the number of tool sequence records that you need, which for most of the time would just be 2. Alternatively, you could leave it as 2 tool sequence records and add additional tools to the work order if you needed 3 or 4 traffic lights. You needn't create tool sequence records for all the tools that the crew will ever go out with, only the tools which are needed most of the time and which would stop the crew from forming if the tool assets were not available. The other fields in the dialog are asset, which is mandatory, the tool number, the effective date, also mandatory, and the end date. The select value on the tool number are the tool items marked as rotating. This field will be filled when you select the tool sequence, but you can change it. For example, you have multiple types of bucket truck for handling different heights. You could select a different type of bucket truck to the one that normally goes out with the crew. After you use OK, the Assign Tool Assets row is filled. The asset field in this table window does have a detail menu action called View Crew Assignments, which allows you to see where the tool asset has been assigned between two dates. There is a refresh button to perform the query. The same is applicable on the Labour field in the Assign Labour table window on the Labour Assignments tab. Something to bear in mind is that if the tool assets is held in a storeroom, as shown in the Stock Tools application, then you should still issue the tool asset from the storeroom and return it when no longer required. The crew assignment status action shows the requirement status for each required tool. There are the same set of 5 statuses as there were for labour. OK, requirement not met, not available, not assigned, and multiple. The required qualifications will be seen on the Labour Assignments tab and has a simple set of 2 statuses, OK or not qualified. There are a few other view actions in the Crews application we have not made a reference to. View Status History shows the status changes between active and inactive. View Work Order shows the crew work assignments between 2 dates, and View Actuals History shows the reported hours between 2 dates for labour and tools which reference the crew. A crew workgroup is used for filtering crews. In the Crews application, you indicate the crew workgroup to which a crew belongs. You might think of this in a similar way to how you might consider a work location in relation to labour. For a utility that works multiple regions and areas, a work location may be each depot. There could be multiple in an area and multiple crews could go out from the same depot. A crew workgroup might be at depot, area or region level. It depends at what level you perform the planning of crew assignments to work. You use the Persons Groups application to define a crew workgroup. The name of the crew workgroup is the Person Group Identifier. There is a crew workgroup field in the header of the Person Groups application which needs to be set. This can be set for multiple person groups by using the List tab action make available to crews. The people you add to the person group would be the pool of people that you use to make the labour assignments to the crews that reference the crew workgroup. But there is no validation of this. Crew workgroups are used to define who is responsible for work. The crew workgroup will be found in the responsibility section in the job plans, preventive maintenance and work order tracking applications. The PM workgroup takes priority over the one from the job plan when generating PM-based work orders. The crew workgroup is also on the job plan task. It is the third task field, along with owner and owner group, that gets copied at the task level to the work order. All fields define who is responsible for the task. The crew workgroup will also be found on the Labour tab of the job plan, where it flows through to the Plans Labour tab on the work order tracking application and onto the work assignments on the Assignments tab. On work assignments, crews are being filtered by the crew workgroup. On the job plan Labour tab, the crew workgroup is defaulted from the value entered on the job plan header. On the Plans Labour tab on the work order tracking application, the crew types are also filtered by the crew workgroup. There is no direct association between a crew type and crew workgroup, but Maximo does this by looking at the crews associated with the crew workgroup and filtering to only the crew types of those crews. The crew workgroup is therefore acting as a filter for the crews that can be assigned to a work order. You'll find that the Assignment Manager application also fully supports crews and crew workgroups, and where you see the crew workgroup column on the upper table window, the work list, then this is coming from the assignment record. Getting the assignments crew workgroup populated is important, and you will need to work out where in the overall process from job plan through to work order assignments it is entered. There is an action called Crew Assignment Options in the Organisations application with one field for setting the availability factor for all crews. This affects the available hours of the crews in the Assignment Manager application. For example, an availability factor of 0.75 on a calendar with an 8-hour shift means that the crew is available to be assigned up to 6 hours of work on a day. The crew's actual hours that are spent on work orders is supported in both the work order tracking application Actuals tab with the Enter Time by Crew action, and in the Labour Reporting application using the Enter by Crew action. Both actions use a similar dialog where you select the crew and a work date, and when you use the refresh button, the assigned labour and tools for the work date are populated. In this dialog on the work order tracking application, when you enter a new row in the work order assigned to crew table window, it defaults to the current work order and you enter the start time and end time, and the actual duration is calculated. In the labour reporting version of the dialog, you can enter multiple work orders, as if you were filling in the time report at the end of the shift. In both cases, the Select Crew button writes transaction records in the labour reporting table LabTrans for each person assigned to the crew. This dialog will also be writing actual tool records if there are tool assignments on the crew. This will require a tool rate which is entered in the Tools application and Tool Organisation Details action. And without the tool rate, you will receive error BMX AT0417E. The tool does not have an associated rate for current organisation, and this will prevent you from saving the crew's labour time. I hope you've enjoyed this video on crew types, crews and crew workgroups and found it useful, and thank you for watching. We would like to see you back in our next episode when we will be reviewing calendars, shifts and people and crew availability. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. The music is called Drag Race from the group called Track Tribe. Do check them out on tracktribe.com, all one word. Until another time, goodbye.